A man in a 14th century English village woke up one morning with no lord, no guild, and no permission from anyone, and still figured out how to eat. The question is, what did he know that we forgot? Here is the context you need before we get into the list. Between 1348 and 1350, the Black Death swept through Europe and wiped out somewhere between a third and half of the entire population. What happened next was not just tragedy. It was the birth of the independent gig worker. For the first time, surviving peasants could walk away from their lords, travel to a new town, and demand cash in hand for their labor. The medieval side hustle was not born from ambition. It was born from necessity. The first hustle on this list is the one that started everything, the peddler. Medieval peddlers did not own shops. They bought goods cheap in one market town and walked them to the next village where those same goods were scarce and worth more. That is pure arbitrage. That is thrift store flipping. Today in 2026, a guy with a pickup truck and a Saturday morning can hit 3 thrift stores, spend $80, and turn it into $250 on Facebook Marketplace or at a flea market by afternoon. They did not have apps. They had resourcefulness. Hustle number 2 is the cutler. In medieval towns, the cutler was the person who forged, repaired, and sharpened blades for everyone else. Blacksmiths made the metal. Cutlers kept it sharp. Today, mobile knife sharpening is one of the most underrated cash-in-hand gigs running. The average rate is $1.50 to $2 per inch of blade. An 8-inch chef's knife pays $16. Set up at a weekend farmer's market with a basic $200 belt sander, and you can realistically clear $40 to $60 an hour in pure cash with zero overhead beyond gas. Hustle number 3 is the rag and bone man. Medieval rag pickers collected bones for fertilizer and rags for paper mills. They were essentially the recycling industry of their era, and they got paid in cash by the pound. The modern version is scrapping. In 2026, bare bright copper is hovering above $4 a pound. A scrapper who knows which neighborhoods put out heavy appliances on bulk trash day can pull $200 to $300 in a single weekend without touching a single app or platform. Word of mouth and a truck. That is the whole business model. Hustle number 4 is the woodmonger. In medieval England, selling fuel was not optional. It was survival. Woodmongers cut, split, seasoned, and delivered firewood to households that could not do it themselves, and they charged accordingly. The modern version has barely changed. In 2026, a seasoned cord of hardwood, oak or hickory, sells for $300 to $500 depending on your region. The labor is real, but the margin is too. A guy with a chainsaw, a splitter, and a pickup truck can move 2 cords on a fall weekend and clear $600 cash with zero middleman. Hustle number 5 is the Thatcher. Medieval Thatchers were roofing specialists who worked village to village on a contract basis. No permanent employer, no guild membership required at the entry level. They showed up, they did the work, they got paid, and they moved on. The modern parallel is any skilled trade worker who does side jobs on weekends. Roofers, drywallers, fence builders. The mechanic of the medieval world was whoever showed up with the right tools and a reputation. Your reputation traveled by word of mouth then. It still does now, just sometimes with a photo on a neighborhood app. Hustle number 6 is the farrier. Medieval farriers shod horses for farmers, knights, and merchants who could not do it themselves. The key inside here is not the horses. It is the model. A specialized skill, performed on location, billed by the job, no shop required. Today that model maps onto mobile mechanics, mobile welders, and mobile equipment repair. Any tradesman who can bring the service to the customer instead of making the customer come to a shop has a structural pricing advantage. You charge for the convenience. Medieval farriers understood this 400 years before anyone called it a premium service. Hustle number 7 is the miller's side deal. Official millers ground grain for a fee. But the smart ones also ran a secondary hustle. They kept a small percentage of every batch as payment in kind, then resold that surplus grain or flour at market. This one got buried, but it never stopped working. The modern version is any service worker who holds back a small inventory of what they process and resells it separately. The auto parts guy who buys returns and flips them. The warehouse worker who knows which pallets get liquidated and gets there first. Same mechanic, different century. Hustle number 8 is the Chandler. Medieval chandlers made and sold candles, which were the only reliable light source most households had. The Chandler who figured out a better wick or a longer-burning tallow mix had a genuine competitive product in a market with real daily demand. Today, the parallel is anyone who makes a consumable product people genuinely need to restock. Soap, fire starters, wood wax, leather conditioner. The Chandler's edge was not creativity for its own sake. It was solving a daily problem better than the next person. That is still the whole game. Hustle number 9 is the tinker. Tinkers were traveling repair people who fixed pots, pans, and metal household goods that were too expensive to simply replace. They moved from village to village with a small kit of tools and charged by the repair. The modern version is appliance repair, small engine repair, or even electronics repair done out of a garage or a tailgate. The average American household still delays replacing a broken item if someone trustworthy will fix it for a reasonable cash price. Tinkers knew that. Your grandparents already solved this problem. We just stopped listening. Hustle number 10 is the carter. Medieval carters owned a cart and an animal and rented out hauling services to people who needed things moved but did not own the equipment. Simple, scalable, cash in hand. In 2026, anyone with a pickup truck and a trailer is running the exact same business. Junk hauling, furniture moving, debris removal after a renovation. TaskRabbit charges a $25 registration fee just to get started and takes days to approve you. A flyer at the hardware store costs nothing and gets you a call by Thursday. The carter never waited for platform approval. Hustle number 11 is the Fletcher. Fletchers made arrows, and in medieval England, that was a government-mandated skill. Every able-bodied man was required by law to practice archery, which meant consistent demand for arrows regardless of whether there was a war on. The modern parallel is any skill tied to a mandatory or recurring activity. Think about it. Vehicle registration is mandatory, so emissions repair shops never run dry. Lawn ordinances are enforced, so mowing services always have a floor of demand. Find the thing people are legally or socially required to do and position yourself to help them do it. Hustle number 12 is the fuller. Fullers processed raw wool cloth by beating and washing it to thicken the fibers, a dirty and physical job that most people with any other option avoided. They got paid well precisely because nobody wanted to do it. The modern equivalent is any unglamorous but necessary service that the market underserves because it is unpleasant. Grease trap cleaning, septic pumping, hoarding cleanouts, biohazard disposal. These are not glamorous. They are also not competed to death by people with ring lights and laptops. The fuller's lesson: the less appealing the job, the less competition you face. Hustle number 13 is the Scrivener. Medieval Scriveners wrote documents for people who could not read or write, which was most of the population. Contracts, wills, letters, petitions. They charged per document. The skill was not literacy for its own sake. It was translating what someone needed into a format that carried legal or social weight. Today, that maps onto anyone who helps people navigate paperwork they find confusing. Tax prep for cash. Resume writing for tradespeople. Grant application help for small nonprofits. The Scrivener's real product was not writing. It was removing a barrier that stood between someone and something they needed. Hustle number 14 is the Dyer. Medieval dyers colored fabric for weavers and tailors who did not have the setup to do it themselves. The key business insight is that dyers did not sell cloth. They sold a transformation service to people who already had the raw material. In 2026, powder coating, custom painting, and vinyl wrapping are the same model. Someone brings you their object. You change how it looks. You charge for the transformation. The dyer who figured out a color nobody else in the region could reproduce had a monopoly until someone reverse engineered it. Proprietary process equals pricing power. Same today. Hustle number 15 is the ferryman. Medieval ferrymen owned a boat and charged travelers to cross rivers at points where there was no bridge. They did not build the river. They did not build the road. They simply positioned themselves at the point where two things that people needed, getting from here to there, met an obstacle. The modern parallel is anyone who positions themselves at a friction point. The person who knows which junkyard has what part and brokers the connection. The guy who knows which contractor is looking for work and which homeowner needs a contractor. You are not the skill. You are the crossing point. Hustle number 16 is the Cordwainer. Cordwainers made shoes from new leather, distinct from cobblers who repaired old ones. The Cordwainer's edge was custom fit. Mass-produced shoes did not exist yet, So if your feet were unusual, you paid a specialist. Today, the parallel is any custom fabrication work that mass production cannot accommodate. Custom metal brackets. Specialty woodwork for odd dimension spaces. Anything where the standard size does not fit the actual problem. The Cordwainer was not competing with the market. He was serving the customer the market left behind. That gap still exists in almost every trade. Hustle number 17 is the charcoal burner. Charcoal burners lived at the edge of forests and ran slow-burning mounds of wood for days at a time, producing the high-heat fuel that blacksmiths and metalworkers needed. It was solitary, patient work that required almost no capital beyond an axe and knowledge of the process. Today, the parallel is any production-based hustle with low startup cost and steady industrial demand. Biochar production for gardeners. Custom smoking wood for barbecue restaurants. The charcoal burner's business was not glamorous. It was essential infrastructure for everyone else's work, and essential infrastructure gets paid. Hustle number 18 is the market crier. Medieval market criers were essentially paid to stand in a town square and announce what merchants had for sale. They were the advertising industry of their era, and they got paid per announcement. The modern equivalent is anyone who does local promotional work for small businesses that have no marketing budget. Distributing flyers. Putting up yard signs. Running a neighborhood bulletin board, physical or digital. The market crier did not need to own the product. He just needed a loud voice and a route. Old hustle, new money. Hustles 19 through 25 move fast, so stay with me. The wheelwright repaired wagon wheels on the road, not in a shop, and billed for the emergency. Mobile repair premium. The cooper made barrels for anyone who needed to store or ship anything, which was everyone. Container fabrication on demand. The saddler customized gear for individual customers who could not use off-the-shelf equipment. Custom fit, custom price. The glassblower supplied a product with almost no local competition because the skill barrier was high. Barrier equals margin. The mason did piecework on construction sites with no permanent employer. Day labor, cash in hand, repeat. Hustle 24 is the warrener. Warreners managed rabbit warrens on behalf of landowners and sold the surplus rabbits and pelts at market. What they were really doing was managing a recurring biological resource for a fee while keeping a cut of the output. Today, that maps onto anyone who manages a productive asset they do not own in exchange for a share of the revenue. Managing a storage unit for a landlord who lives out of state. Running a small produce stand on someone else's land for a split. The warrener understood that you do not need to own the asset. You just need to be the person who runs it. Hustle 25 is the most important one on this list. The journeyman. After completing an apprenticeship, a journeyman traveled from town to town offering his skill to any master who needed temporary help. No permanent job. No single employer. A verified skill, a reputation that traveled with him, and the freedom to go where the work was. In 2026, the journeyman model is exactly what the gig economy was supposed to be before the platforms took their cut. A skilled tradesperson with a truck, a reputation, and the sense to find underserved markets does not need a platform. The journeyman never did. Here is what ties all 25 of these together. Not one of them required a degree, a platform, a startup fund, or anyone's permission. They required a skill, a reputation, and the willingness to show up. The medieval economy was brutal and unfair in ways we should never romanticize. But the independent workers inside it figured out something that a lot of people in 2026 are still trying to rediscover, that the space between what someone needs and what the market conveniently provides is always where the money lives. It was true in 1350. It is still true today. If you found one or two ideas in this list that you want to test this month, drop them in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more of this, the video on Depression-era income strategies that still work in 2026 is sitting right there. Those people were working with even less than a 14th century village had, and some of what they figured out will genuinely surprise you. I am Dean Harlow. See you in the next one.